Welcome, listeners, to the Traveler Chronicles, where the enchanting world of Extraeus comes to life. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your guide through the pivotal scenes in our thrilling Dungeons & Dragons homebrew campaign. Join us as we embark on adventures with the Travelers, a diverse group of heroes, each with their own unique reason for traveling the world. Together we'll explore the rich lore and vibrant landscapes of Extraeus, filled with magic, mystery, and unforgettable moments. And don't miss out on our special segment, Traveler's Tidings with Luna, where reporter Luna, played by my wonderful wife, DNDWife, interviews intriguing characters from our world, bringing their stories to life in delightful, immersive conversations. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon master seeking inspiration or a newcomer eager to dive into a fantastical journey, the Traveler Chronicles has something for everyone. So grab your gear and prepare for adventure. The world of Extraeus awaits. Welcome back, travelers, to another exciting episode of the Traveler's Chronicles. I'm DM Eguile, joined as always by my co-host, DNDWife.
Hi, everyone.
And tonight we're diving deep into the world of Extraeus as we continue our look at the travelers' adventures in Arinoka, the holy city of the Mirren tribes. Tonight's focus, the grand finale of the campaign's prologue, a scene that was completely shaped by the dice. We're breaking down how a simple escape turned into an unforgettable moment where one unlucky roll sealed a character's fate. Tonight we're joined by two amazing players, Thomas, who plays Captain V, and Richard, who plays Thomas.
Welcome.
Hello. What's up?
These two were both at the center of all of this chaos, and they're here to share their thoughts on how it all unfolded. So obviously today, in today's episode, we're going to be hearing about how the dice are shaping pretty much the entirety of our campaign, just as they should. Also kind of giving the breakdown of just like one of the many things in every D&D campaign has to offer, that chaotic escape scene where you're either escaping from or from towards whatever chaos you're heading towards. And as always, with this new way we got going, we're going to end with a nice round table discussion with all of us to discuss about more of a deep dive into what was the DM thinking, what were the players thinking. So sit right for plenty of laughs, lessons, and some more war stories.
Before we dive in, don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the Traveler Chronicles. Your support helps us grow, and we love hearing your feedback. Also, join us on Discord, where we chat about the campaign, dice disasters, and everything in between.
Right. And so, I felt this was pretty fitting because this was, not only is this the end of the kind of prologue that we've been setting up and we've been going through for a good couple of sessions on our end. But really, this really flows into our kind of campaign's philosophy, right? So like when it comes to the world of Extraeus, and as we've been talking in all these Travelers Chronicles, all of the craziness that happens is really been done by the dice.
It's so insane how much of the story is actually just rolls.
Right, and so I feel like that's kind of the nature, as a lot of us know from playing D&D, in that really the dice does kind of have its own brain and decide certain decisions at certain pinnacle moments, and that's really key for what we wanted in Extraeus, right? So when we started creating this, every choice, every decision, whether it was something big, small, was all down by rolls. When we built the world map, that was based on rolls. You sat at a table throwing tons of dice around. They all meant different things, and that shaped the world. When we decided what continent we were going to start on, and that, in our campaign, really determined where the story was going to go. Right? Absolutely. I feel like if we would have started in like the Scalekin Isles, our story would be entirely different.
Each continent is so unique. The people are so different that we'd like to joke that there are certain difficulty levels for each continent. And so depending on where we would have started would have depended on the difficulty level.
So that was kind of, always interesting. And then even like when it comes to like the gifts and the curses that each one of the players has, that was all done by, rolls. Absolutely. And even like within the world itself, there are chaotic magic rolls and wild magic surge rolls. So almost everything when it comes to our world is shaped, we really want to lean into the dice.
Yeah.
And then I even go even further with, this kind of philosophy of like, oh, I intimidate. It's like, okay, is that through your physicality? Is that through a strength check, a persuasion check, an intimidation check, all these different things, because that changes kind of how that role becomes, right? So like, a persuasion roll versus an intimidation roll really kind of determines what is the reaction if you do get that natural one,
That's
if you get that nat one, if you get that natural 20. So it even changes even more of like these unexpected consequences of now even the type of roll. But I mean, the dice control so much. They can both be like these little beacons of joy when you get that nat 20. But as you know, they can be your greatest enemy.
Oh my gosh, they could be such a nightmare. And I have personal experience with this. I think I'm pretty sure I hold the table record.
Yeah, I think there's a few that are starting to catch up with you now with this new campaign. But...
True. This is a new campaign. This is different. But so far, I have held the table record for the most failed saving throws.
Yeah, you're pretty bad at it. You tend to, whatever your character is, gets caught in like the worst situation.
Oh, definitely. I think the best example for this is the first campaign we did, where I was playing Alira, a sort of Vistani bard, and every time we went into battle, I was held person every single time, and I could not save to save my life. It literally, like at one point, I think I was about to get attacked. And there was nothing I could do about it. Yeah, but like, I mean, I was completely alone at those two specific times.
Yeah.
And I would have been done.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for like one saving grace or something.
I feel bad too, because it's such a common spell in D&D for like it's like your baseline like hold thing.
It's not even the most powerful of the hold spells.
No, but like for you, it's your like bane. That's another spell, but it is like the worst thing for you, and it is those moments where it's just like, you're not even looking for like a nat 20. You're just like, I need a 10 or higher, and I can't even get that.
Yeah, at that point in the campaign, literally, I just needed like a 5, and I would have been fine. But I kept rolling like 2, 1.
Yeah, and at the same time, like when stuff like that happens, especially like narratively, it shows like an effect on your character, like narration as you play it, right? So like I still remember where it was Alira in like the tournament arc, right?
Yeah.
In their tournament arc. You have a tournament arc in every campaign. And I remember it was the whole person when you fought the Dark Elves.
Oh, I know.
Right? And that was one where it was like, okay, when you first started, she was like way into like being up front and trying to be a frontline attacker. But then like when you almost got beheaded, it was like, okay, I'm going to stay in the back.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that again.
And then when you got the ability to fly, you never touched the ground again because it was like the only way to make sure somebody wasn't going to be able to get to you.
Yeah. And I'm squish already. Like I didn't want to die, and I didn't. I never did.
But I think that goes to show. I mean the way, and I think all of us will probably agree. Like when I watch like television shows now or things, or even even the real life, someone like trips over something. It's like, oh, that was a nat 1 dex.
Yep.
They failed their acrobatics check.
Or if something goes really well in a plan or something, be like nat 20 right there.
Yeah, right. Like something, you find the dollar on the ground. Hey, you rolled a nat 20 perception check. Check it out.
I even do that in real life too with anything like that I do.
Yeah, because like some of the best moments are the ones that aren't planned. That's why we roll these clickety clackities, right? Yeah. Is because we want not the just, if we want that, we can read a book, right? We can read a story that we know is going to have
everything set
triumphant, and we can just, instead of being, this person's name, you scratch out and you're like, my name, in the story,
like a Mad Lib.
But really, that's why we play. It's because you're always have like this looming instant success, instant fail, because that's how we play. Not everyone I know has that rule set. But because of that, you always have those chances for like huge narrative changes. Instead of it just being like, oh, suddenly, this source of power comes out of nowhere. We tend to try to explain that. We explain what happens with a nat 1, or just like natural implications, which is why we chose tonight's scene for its importance, right? Because it really showed how, a nat 1 in most realistic terms, you'd be like, oh, you failed, it's, try again.
You face planted.
But in a narrative sense, what exactly did a nat 1 cause in our story? As well as how the dice can really really make you not do what you want to do.
Yeah, you can decide this is not my fate. Doesn't matter if the dice don't want
or
it.
Or you really want to hit something as best as you can, but for whatever reason, you just cannot hit it. And you roll every dice that you have in your bag, and each dice says no.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then you just wait. But sometimes you just got to let it go because the dice have a plan. And it's not your dice that's about to ruin someone's day. It's someone else's dice that are going to do it for you.
Oh yeah, I think that's the best, aspect of the dice. It's a little frustrating sometimes that you don't know what the outcome is, but I think that's the best part of it. The fun. That's why we play D&D, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too. Is like, you want to embrace failure sometimes, and I mean that's the other part of this story, right? The other part of this story is that theoretically, the players had failed in this moment, right? Like they didn't succeed in what they thought they were going to. Nope. The story got way bigger than they thought, real quick, and so it also is kind of what I always try to teach as a DM to players, especially in the beginning, is like, not every fight is meant to be fought. Yeah. There isn't a continue button to try again. So sometimes it's best, to take the Jack Sparrow route.
Yeah,
and
you fight to run away.
And so, it's the same thing with dice. Sometimes let the failure. It might lead you down a narrative corridor or a backstory line that actually will be, every hero, every adventurer has negative things, adversity. No one has just the smooth ride to victory.
Absolutely. So
you want to kind of let that do that. And then not only that, but like with us is letting the dice aside, then you get the impartiality of it. There's especially I know a lot of DMs are about changing the dice, and fudging the numbers. And like there could be some instances where that is. But sometimes if you're going to end up killing a player, kill the damn player.
Right.
Let that see, because who knows what that might do down the line.
Right. I think the best example would be like Molly Mock in the Mighty Nine. Yeah. It was such an impactful loss for the group that it really kind of shaped the rest of the campaign for them and what they did.
Right. Yeah. That's a perfect example because it is. It's like, but if you were just like, oh, I don't want them to get down, so let's not do that. Now the bad guy who hates this guy is going to go, oh, you're on death's door, I'm going to walk over here and attack the other guy at full health. No, that's probably not what's going to happen. But it's going to make your story seem a lot better. And it's really kind of what the scene for tonight that we're going to talk about and why it's so important. Because it really shows that kind of trifecta, right? That the dice have a decision and they're going to make it, right? And they're going to decide for you what should happen. All right. And that's why, this scene was so important in that aspect, because I feel like this was one where not only was it based on like, I guess, fantasy cliche a little bit, but I guess it's cliche because it just happens. Like no matter what, these crazy incidences of like nat 20s and natural ones really kind of shape the story. And so as we finish off with the last episode of Traveler Chronicles, where we had talked about kind of the beginning of everything going to shit in Arinoka, what we were left with was essentially the travelers, this group of ragtag adventurers who just at this moment really are just grouped by convenience and the fact that they were all kind of a traveling group going to this location, kind of have their first like banding together moment as like all hell is breaking loose, right? But it does get to that point once you see like these three giant demons that stand, 15 feet tall and all that. Yeah, you kind of know it's time to GTFO.
Yes, it's time to go.
Right. And so with that, it was basically that moment of, do we fight or do we flee? But then what was going on is we started seeing other Mirren kind of around the area kind of molting and transforming into these like strange creatures, right? So then it's like it goes in the narrative sense of seeing kind of these three demons, but then now you have in the gameplay sense of now there are more enemy numbers growing around you. And at that point it was, okay, we can't win this. Like there's no way. I think it's kind of one of those moments where it's like, we're level 3. Like, how are we supposed to be fighting like some demigod kind of level calamity?
I think I had 4 spell slots,
right?
Maybe?
So it's like at that point you're just like, the DM is very clearly telling us to go to leave.
Yeah.
And so you really made that decision. And what I thought was interesting is like, it's a good test of like how you lead, right? So like with our group, it still really showed that there was still kind of a splitting of the group, right?
Yeah.
Because really what ends up happening is you have some that just kind of hightail it forward, because naturally in D&D you have characters with different speeds, so they just get ahead of each other. And so we have Bricky and Bogbean heading towards Tobias's wagon, because it's the only thing they know for transport.
Yep, and they were the first ones to leave too, because Bricky was like, "Nope,
yeah, right."
I'm out.
As we showed in the first one, they were the ones that first saw what was going south, but couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
And so, as they're getting far ahead, it really gets that opportunity for, split decision making, because now as they get further and further away, they're not really seeing each other, no longer communicating. So as Bricky and Bogbean get up to the wagon, they find, this kind of familial, but yet familiar, but kind of still holding a bit of aggression of Lincoln, as. Now, that's a few episodes back, but we had talked about this guy who had once tried to kidnap and sell Drexla for some money that didn't quite go. So there was still a little animosity. But this was always those glorious things of when you're in a hurry and you make sudden decisions, especially in D&D, and how much that can lead to some fun for DMs. Because obviously you see this character who had these nefarious, motives against you once before. Their first assumption was he was stealing it.
Yeah, he was running off with the wagon, taking the cart, and just going.
And so as they see this, it's obvious this guy already had crossed one of them once before, already having issues in once before. So they're going to go ahead and jump on top of that and make sure that basically now's our chance to take him out and have no problems whatsoever. And so that's kind of that interesting point too, because that's that whole aspect of dragging people in, right? Like, so obviously if two of your party goes and attacks, pretty much everyone's going into attack.
Yeah, we're all going to help.
Because as the fight turns out and as the rest of the party kind of catches up, some of the party members start kind of being like, whoa, what are we doing? Luna and Tobias kind of trying to stop anything before a fatal blow is struck. But of course, when you have the two of Bricky and Bogbean, the damage output is so crazy at this point that they quickly kind of dispatch him and essentially gravely wound him to the point where he's basically bleeding out unconscious onto the ground. But in the time of kind of making this decision, because obviously all hell is breaking loose, the city is burning at this point, and all they're watching is some of the Mirren kind of transforming and attacking their brethren and kind of spreading out. So there's not a lot of time, even though obviously with it being a D&D table, there's a little more time in the real world, but narratively, there wasn't much time. So the decision was called, for some strange reason, to take Lincoln with you guys. And as the party was kind of discussing with Tobias and Luna, there ends up being a quote-unquote accidental pop shot.
I think I was unconscious.
Well, this is what made Luna unconscious. There was the critical failure shot that instead struck Luna, rendering her unconscious. So then it was Tobias kind of making his first kind of almost like intimidation check to the party, as it was grab Luna, grab Lincoln, get them in the wagon, and let's get the hell out.
It's my wagon. I
with
get to decide.
With essentially the idea, just jump in the back. He's going to perform triage of the two of you. Just, we need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And so with that, like they start to kind of catch off. But the funny thing is now you have Bogbean and Bricky leading this car, having no idea how to actually like operate a cart and wagon.
Oh, so bad.
Which caused so many problems, which we'll discuss in a later episode. But what we had was an even greater scene. So at this point, we have in the back of this small cooking wagon, essentially what is like a food truck of D&D.
Yep.
And there are 5 party members now. We have Tobias, we have Luna unconscious on one side, we have Lincoln unconscious on the ground, we have Drexla, and we have Captain V, all crammed within this with Tobias.
It's so bad for cross-contamination.
As Tobias is attempting to revive Luna first, I mean, at least party priority.
Yeah.
At this point, Captain V and Drexla kind of seeing an opportunity, and given that Drexla has the most beef with Lincoln, decide to take this opportunity to take small pop shots and attempt to end Lincoln's life right there, then and there. But during this time, they cannot hit the broadside of a barn.
Yep.
They miss, I want to say, at least 3 to 4 to 5 separate shots from each one of them attempting to finish off.
They both rolled horribly.
All whilst rolling stealth checks to make sure that they're not being detected by anyone in the party.
Tobias couldn't see them, yeah.
So all this time, Tobias is reviving Luna as Lincoln is essentially now just like all these miniature holes riddled all around his body at the bottom of the wagon.
Yeah.
But as Tobias finally gets up to an opportunity to raise Tobias, much to Luna's persistence, as she's like wiping the blood from her own mouth and taking the wound out, taking the bolt out of her side. As Tobias goes to kind of render aid, at this point I believe he's out of pretty much most of like his main magical abilities. Yeah. So he's kind of forced to do just your standard medicine check. Now he has a feature that allows him to give health, but as we've said in the beginning of this story, the dice have a way of making things happen.
Yep.
And on that medicine check, as this character who seemed to have, through no invention of mine, the strongest of plot armor, the plot set had enough.
Yeah.
And
it was time.
Tobias rolled a nat 1 on that medicine check, and I felt like it only made sense that would be the kind of straw that broke the lion's back.
Of course, it was a malpractice.
Right.
Case.
And as the way it would be is, poor Tobias, in trying to render aid, does the worst thing and actually is the one that ends Lincoln's life. The one guy trying to save this person is the one to actually do it.
Yeah.
Now, as it goes in, you watch as this scene, because Drexla and V go completely quiet. They don't talk for like the rest of the scene because they're just like, mission accomplished, yet it wasn't their hands.
Yep.
But at that point, there is the decision, and this is the final decision of the scene that I think really set it, because after all is said and done, and it was this, this talk of, bringing him with us and all of that, and the party just decides to chuck his ass out the back of the wagon as you ride off into the smoking forests.
We didn't want to stop in case the demons came,
But it really just shows that, to me, how much the dice control a lot of the scene's narrative, especially if you roll with it, right? Not to be stupid and punny, I guess, but it's just because that really just shows like the multiple ways that, and we're not talking these are, high level rolls, it wasn't a natural 19 or 18. I think it was at most times they needed to beat a 12.
Yeah, if that.
And nobody was, I think, rolling over double digits.
And I'd like to issue one small correction, because we didn't just throw him out of the wagon. We robbed him too. Oh, and then we tossed him out of the wagon.
I guess I should really say in typical D&D fashion. You got something to say there?
Yeah, no. Before we pushed him out, I was stopped so that they could loot his pockets.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
They made sure to go back and retcon that he had not, in fact, been pushed out yet, so that they could go through his pockets.
Yeah.
But as always, at the end, we always kind of join for a little round table discussion with some of my players. That way we can kind of go a little more deep dive, as in most of you, as I imagine out there, you don't have much time to discuss about your campaign or your sessions,
right?
Especially with your DM. So this is kind of a nice way to open up. So obviously we have Thomas and Richard still here with us. So any kind of opening questions, any opening remarks? For me, I feel like just as an open vote, truthfully, did you guys actually want to see Lincoln survive?
I did.
Yeah, I
like
was
not Tobias, not Luna, but your actual selves.
For me, it was a character that I was supposed to have had some ties into, so it is. I always do try and grab onto the threads that you throw out for my character. It does feel kind of dumb to just be like, nah, I don't care about that. I have no idea like what could have developed.
It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but like, because even being not really connected to him, it's just kind of the situation and the feeling of it. I don't think I felt as much necessarily malice to him. Like, I felt like that it could have like if he was alive, I don't think I would have been upset.
Yeah.
As much as I mean, yeah,
but it was mostly
situationally.
It was mostly like as a favor to Drexla.
Drexla was doing it.
Yeah.
Like really, like I think once everything had calmed down, I think that like it was just looking back at it, like you know, maybe not. And I mean, I did eventually stop.
After a couple of missed shots.
Yeah.
I mean, so for you, Richard, how did you feel being that when you got that nat 1 on that medicine check? I mean, you kind of knew that you were going to kill him.
Yeah, the second I got a 1, I was like, we already stated that he had death saves, so it's like, yeah, I think he's done.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt bad too, because I feel like it was just like such a struggle, because it was, you know, Luna and Tobias being like kind of like the angels on the shoulder, and then to be like the death angel.
It is also a characteristic of Tobias that hasn't come into too much play, because a lot of the things we fought so far have been somewhat like mindless, or at least just monstrous. But it is a written thing in Tobias' like backstory that if he can, he tries to spare people, like going as far as to like after fights, if they were humanoids, he would probably go behind and stabilizing enemies, which can get them in trouble. But you know, it's kind of one of his quirks. I mean, I don't know if it's a quirk. I think that was probably just a staple of being a good person, being the only good party member.
I mean, for you, Thomas, with Captain V, I mean, how did you feel like if you actually would have been successful, or Drexla, do you think that would have changed a little bit of the dynamic between like the little piratey group?
Well, not between me and Drexla, I don't think, but like I definitely think it would have changed like the dynamic between most of the party, especially between Tobias and V, for sure. I think that would have changed a lot, because like I was under a different assumption, and I have someone who is technically employed with me, and they're trying to kill him. So it's like, I don't think he would have felt much, but it would have definitely been like, he was already not in Grace's, but Tobias is not going to necessarily give him any slack if he did do that.
If the opportunity
I also didn't help stop it either, so it's not like I was any better.
I don't think it would have changed much, honestly.
Yeah,
because in Tobias's eyes, he failed at saving him, and ultimately, I guess, was the reason he died. But you know, he wasn't the one who shot the arrows into him in the first place. He totally considers you two having killed him.
Right? Sure. Did you expect that as the DM?
I mean, I kind of figured with the way that the story went, and with Drexla getting kidnapped, and that kind of like that little blood flute, it's with Drexla, it's like, at that point in the story, we didn't quite know how far Drexla would go, right? Like, is it cutesy fairy, like, oh, I'm going to put, you know, itching powder in your boots, or I'm going to make a contraption that pulls your fingernails out. Fairy. Right. Or like, goodbye, you know? So it was kind of interesting to see kind of what it was going to be, and that's really, I think, the secondary thing I was thinking of. Yeah. Did I think he was just going to get straight up murked? No. No. Like, but I thought if he was going to, that was like the best way for it.
I think that was perfectly, narratively speaking, the dice know exactly how to roll.
Yeah, right.
And it worked out really perfectly.
So I gotta ask for you, this is like the second campaign in a row where you've been incidentally shot by another teammate.
Yeah, at this point it's become a rite of passage.
And it's one thing to get shot and hit by another player. It's another one to get downed by it.
By a crossbow.
By a crossbow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. At this point, it's just become a tradition of each campaign.
I call next.
Right.
So what do you think, Richard, when it comes down the road with like interactions with like anything with Lincoln forward? Do you think Tobias is going to like just take ownership, or is it just going to be kind of like, if they don't bring it up, he's not going to bring it up?
I don't think there's much to bring up about it. He does... I guess I don't think he's exactly sad Lincoln died. I think maybe more so he's sad he couldn't save him.
Yeah.
But if we're being honest, when the character was introduced, and it was introduced as a slaver who then tried kidnapping a party member, I wasn't surprised at all that we killed him. I was surprised it happened so soon. But even if they're a bad guy, it's kind of Tobias' thing is to save him. Even if he thinks they might deserve to die, I think he usually tries to spare people.
Yeah.
So I don't think it weighs on him too heavily that he died. I think more so just that he couldn't save somebody. And then it's more of like another, you know, pebble in the pile of I couldn't save, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Less of like specifically that it was Lincoln and whatnot.
Right. And I mean, speaking of like, most of this is revolving around like nat 20s, natural ones. Now, most of the time, these are kind of things that just kind of pop up on our own, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to narratively go on. But I know, Thomas, you have the most fun natural 20 in that, like, every time you get a natural 20, no matter what happens.
It hurts myself.
And not only that, but there's like a narrative explosion kind of thing.
Like a natural phenomenon.
I mean, so for you, you are our newest player. I was going to pose this to you first, is just, what do you think was probably your most impactful nat 20 that you've gotten? But for you, it's tough because they're all basically strikes of lightning on every single time.
Yep.
Like, funny wise, I want to say it was...
Because yours has like combos. Like, they can like chain other reactions.
Because like, there's a lot of times that like I've been like under something and it's like been striking things above.
Yeah.
That's
like,
like funny events.
Usually those ones are fun. I'm trying to think of like the good moments of just like I'm trying to do. I think it was the one I was near the trees because I got 2 20s at once, which then struck the tree twice. But who's there? Nobody.
I think the one that struck me out was the one with where Luna's cat got struck.
Yeah,
because Luna's cat was following directly above, and they didn't think about it.
And I just kept getting pretty good 20s at that point.
You owe Luna 10 gold.
It is fun. I will say, statistically speaking, you and probably Bogbean probably get some of the most 20s at our table.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
For the newbies at the table, that's phenomenal.
And the one person who's trying not to get a 20.
19s are the best roll.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'll post the same to you, Richard. What was probably, out of all your campaigns, so you played a few with us, what was probably your highest nat 20?
Yeah.
Oh, as
like your most epic nat 20 that you as a player hold.
Ooh, that's pretty hard because I feel like I've had a couple good ones, but some of them have also like fallen into the wind of if it was either just a good roll or a 20. I'd say there's 2 that kind of seem locked together right now, and both weren't so much like a big thing as more they kind of progressed the story more in a narrative way I enjoyed. One of them being when Zephyr was on the ice playing his shamisen alone, and I managed to get a nat 20 to like walk out into the ice and like then have a vision. That one was very cool. And then rolling the nat 20 in the Hag's Cave to like clear it out and make it like a sanctuary again. I think that one. I think that one is probably leaning towards my favorite, especially at least in this campaign, because I think narratively it was the most like I think the most successful I've been in actually trying to play like this cleric how I see them in my head. It's one of the few times where like the cool guy image you have in your head actually manages to match up with the narrative and what's happening.
Your expectations,
Because
I think I am the king of like having a cool moment and planned out and then going for it, and then just the dice decide that it would be way funnier if instead I made a big speech before falling right under my face.
That's how the dice go. So how about you, D&D wife? Best nat 20.
Oh, that's a toughie because I've had quite a few. So there was the nat 20 when, let's see, I think when I rolled to get this was in the first campaign where we had the little elemental companions.
Oh yeah.
And I had to do the dance through the temple. And one of the last rolls was a nat 20, and I ended up showing Milo how to get through it.
Yeah, I think that one was.
And I got my little chibi.
And that one was even greater elemental too, because again, that was and this it's so funny because each one of your stories really just shows that like. The dice will play the game for you because they know when it's right. Right? Because I remember during that scene, it was supposed to be your character at the time, but it was misinterpreted by another player
for Milo.
To be Milo. And then it was, okay, he's never going to succeed because it's not him. And then here you are rolling nat 20s, being successful. It's like, no, she was destined for this. Even in our world, she's destined for this.
You're right.
And it just shows just kind of that crazy, impact that you get from the dice and the dice rolls, right? Like, you every success and victory you can just attribute to either it's like, ooh, was that a nat 20? Natural 1?
You don't know.
But I mean, that's just a really big deal because I think that's just going to be what really, that's why we're doing the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard with so many roles and so many things that goes on in D&D that like you really got to break it down to the funniest scenes. That one time I rolled a nat 20 or the one time I did some crazy acrobatic moment. Because we try to remember everything after so many. I
thought of another one. That was the best one.
Okay.
This one's my favorite one because it's a Brenna moment, and I loved Brenna because she was phenomenal.
My mom's a bear.
She was Irish, not Scottish. Okay,
What's the difference?
there's a big difference. But no, this was because she was a paladin, so she followed her code, and we were in the town of Goodmead, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the mayor was like super corrupt and evil, so she just like made the decision and like disappeared his head with her hammer. It was dope.
I remember that because that was like the big Caladrax moment of campaign 2 kind of thing where it was just like where a player just does a knee-jerk reaction and just lets it go.
Yep. I was a paladin. I had a code and I had to follow it.
Oh yeah. So I would say after that whole end of the prologue, so the big thing too that I really like with having you, Thomas, and Richard here is that you also kind of represent the kind of the next two of the generational lines. Like we've had Eric and Dan here a few times, and they've been around the longest, but you two are kind of the one person being Richard, the person who didn't really get a prologue and got really kind of just thrown into a long running campaign. And then we got Thomas, who got kind of this like little slower, kind of slow burn intro. I mean, for you, Tom, or for you, Richard, I got to make sure I'm looking who, because they can't see who I'm pointing at. I mean, would you say this is obviously kind of gave you a better understanding of like kind of starting a level 1 character and not having to start a level 11?
It did, but I think I may have had the same problem I did in the beginning, where I was just too used to playing video games and I seen every Nat 1 as just a failure and not like a narrative moment. Because failure can be good narratively for a story, even if you don't always see it at the time, and we're all emotionally invested in our characters. So even, there's times where like even now still like I get a Nat 1 and I'm really actually just like, fuck.
Right.
Like it's not what I wanted at
fail.
all. But then like sometimes I can look back and it's like, no, those were also great moments that like caused even better things to happen. Like I remember campaign 1 flubbing a bunch of rolls with Athena, trying to get her to like come back from like madness. And it sucked that I couldn't, but it also gave us like a cool character to fight towards the end. And
it really
did.
I
mean, that changed
really good Doom.
Because that's really what it is. Like if you just allow it to shape and then and really just kind of roll with it. As much as it sounds like a stupid pun, but it's like, hey, just not every failure is a failure in D&D. Like, a game over screen in like your video game is one thing, but D&D doesn't have really a game over screen.
Not if you don't want it to.
But for you, Thomas, as our resident rookie, or the pair of one of our rookies, now this was kind of the first finishing of your tutorial. Being kind of the more experienced gamer, I mean, how much do you feel like you had a little bit better knowledge? Because I mean, when you stepped in, you had 0 D&D tabletop experience.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like even the minimum amount would have been like 5+ years ago, barely making a sheet, not even attempting anything. So like for me going in, like I know of what it is coming from like playing Warhammer tabletop when I was younger and stuff. So like I already get drawn in narratively to dice rolls making a decision for you, whether a shot misses or hits, or it could be the difference of the world of a 6-sided die, and now you have a 20. But it's true that like a lot of the experience is very eye opening, but it really does make your failures feel bad but feel great at the same time. While the critical success also can make you feel insanely good to situationally being something that you could maybe not be happy about seeing all the time. But it drives the stake forward to like continue on, and honestly gives more and lets you look into other people as a character and as a person of what's going on.
Nice. So anything last little final thoughts for you two for this kind of scene is, as I feel like the biggest thing for me is this really showed. Now we obviously know this is a few episodes or a few sessions behind for us, but we know that I think this really did start shaping kind of the dynamic between Captain V and Tobias, which we'll get into more later, especially after we get to Fort Irrigan. But in the mindset of where you guys were at that point, where do you guys feel like you really felt like it was the best moment as like your final thought for today's episode and scene?
I think final thought. I agree with what you said earlier. Embrace Nat ones. Don't look at them as just an abstract failure. Just take it as a narrative moment. I've had plenty of times where I thought I knew exactly what I wanted and how it would shape my story. And then I rolled poorly, and then it opened up a bunch of new windows that I hadn't even considered because I was so set on this is the thing I want and this is how it's going to go. And then once it doesn't do that, you got to figure out how you're going to fix it, what you're going to do and pivot from there. I think this was a great one of those where I, again, wanted to be the person who's saving everybody and always doing good. And it's like pretty early on, especially on an episode where we're kind of losing a whole city. It's kind of more of like the last nail in the coffin of being like, hey, look, you can't save everyone.
Yeah, it's really like that doctor moment, right? Your first loss is like a surgeon where it's like, you don't just quit. You got to keep going.
And I think it's also like narratively, it was like the first time in a while where like, because his story starts with kind of tragedy and loss and not being able to do that. But he's starting to gain powers and skill with his own medicine. So I think he was starting to get ahead of like a bigger head on himself and thinking he can do a lot. And then it was immediately like, nope, reminder, like you are still mortal and you still like have to like accept the dice rolls and what they give you.
Narratively, I think what a big actual impact it had for my character for V actually was seeing what it did to him. So like that failure on him, like it, I would say opened the eyes to try not to be as much like, not as bad, but like feeling more towards what he's seen loss, characters seen loss and seen plenty of people trying their best. And watching that made him try to do better about things. Like trying to try to help a little bit better. Oh, it's a work in progress, though.
You're not going to be an expert.
You can't be the best good person overnight.
Yeah.
But like seeing that narratively, I think that's what happened with V. Was just that. Was seeing that he tried his best, even despite everything that happened, to save two people, and he can only save one, and then he may have had that. He may have dealt the final blow, but we know who really did.
Right.
So, like, but it did make him, like, consider what's going on with Tobias in itself and try to be better about, like, not making it his problem or trying to do better to random people like he can. He tries to help move him along from a failure to a different success, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
So how about you, Luna / DNDWife?
For me, I think I've always been just really happy with letting the dice roll. Since camping, I've just loved the idea of it, and my best thing for me is just leave it up to the dice. I don't want to push it in any direction that might seem like I'm metagaming or anything like that. So I like leaving it up to chance. And in that way, I believe we're embodying the nature of Extraeus and how natural we want it to be. Because we don't want it to be a story, like you said, in a book where we know where the next outcome is, and then it's followed by this.
I don't want to skip ahead,
right? And it always ends with a happy ending because that's how all books end. You don't want that necessarily all the time. Well, like some books,
as
right?
we all communally give the iffy sign, as like most of us has read like Game of Thrones or whatnot.
It's changed. Someone won. So technically, it was a happy ending for someone.
Yeah, I think
story.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's totally what it is, because for me it was. I loved it because it really, I think, cemented the prologue's kind of impact, because I think it left a lot of questions unanswered, but it also gave a lot of impactful deaths where, this person that was, I guess, somebody that, some of the players wanted to connect with and maybe learn more, others wanted to see eliminated. It really shows that the party is aligned, but they also still have those kind of choices that they're going to make that are going to be kind of separating the groups. And we know what happens later on, but we're not spoiling it yet.
Right.
But we will say that it does play this impact, this moment rings true and rings bells 10, 15 sessions down the line, this will still become an important thing.
And this wasn't the only death caused by a failure during this scene, too, because we lost Ella during this time as well.
Yeah.
And that was a huge hit to Tobias and his sort of mission,
Yep.
So that might be something to talk about later.
and it just also shows the randomness. Like, that's what makes D&D so much fun. That's why we come together. That's why we like rolling the little clickety-clackities, is because that chance, and it's only 5%, right?
Yeah.
That 5% chance of the 20 and 1 changes the entire direction. It's the multiverse of madness, right? Like, it just meant you get a 20, and what the DM or the player thought they were going to go has now completely changed.
Oh, yeah.
And just lean into it. Lean
It's so much
into
fun.
it. Let it go, and you will so much more enjoy your games.
Oh, yeah. And the story will be so much richer, too. So, yeah, I think we loved the story, and we'd love to hear from you as well. Like, what's the wildest dice moment you've ever had? Drop us a comment or join our Discord. We'd love to hear from you.
Also, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, review, and subscribe. And any podcasting platform, YouTube, wherever you find us, anywhere online, hit the like, hit the plus, hit whatever, subscribe. That helps us out so much. And once again, thank you to our two guests, my two players, Thomas and Richard. It's always nice to have these two kind of in here, because they are the ones that kind of give me the most grief at the table. So it's nice to have an opportunity to grill them for once. But as always, until next time, travelers, may your rolls be high and your adventures be legendary. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Traveler Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed your journey through the world of Extraeus and the adventures of the travelers themselves. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring the magic of Extraeus to life. Want to be part of the story? Join our community on Discord, where you can chat with us and the travelers themselves. Share your own adventures and dive even deeper into the world of Extraeus. Don't forget to check out our videos on the Couple of Nerds YouTube page for even more content, including behind-the-scenes looks, painting tutorials by DNDWife, and so much more. Thank you for being a part of our adventure. So keep rolling those dice, and may your journeys be filled with wonder and excitement. Till next time, on the next episode of the Traveler Chronicles.